Back in November, former Montana State Representative Tom Winter announced his run for Congress. As a union member himself, Winter is running to defeat the big corporations and out-of-state billionaires that have broken local politics and weakened labor laws in Montana. Democratic candidate for Montana's 2nd Congressional District, Tom Winter, joins us to discuss his race further. Tom, thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Ryan. How are you?
I'm good. So can you talk a little bit about the district that you're going to be running in? Have the lines fully been drawn, and what are the contours of it?
Well, so most people probably outside of Montana really don't know much about our geography or where we are here. So if you think about the mountainous portion of Montana, not the flat part, that's us, the new district. We have an independent redistricting commission here, which we actually are blessed to have. So we did not see the gerrymandering other states might. So what we're looking at is essentially basically Glacier Park through the college town of Missoula, down to the Idaho border and east to Bozeman and through Butte. And so it's much more as far as the prior district where it was at large. It's a much more Democratic-leaning district. It's a much more progressive and union-heavy district. And we're seeing a lot of the inequality that's been seen in large coastal cities creeping into our world here. And it's really causing a lot of pain. And my campaign is trying to answer that and hopefully chart a way forward in this new district and the new reality kind of Montanans are facing.
So what are the politics of the rural working class voters in that portion of Montana?
Well, I can tell you that's an interesting question because, Montana as a whole is a largely working class state. The Western District, however, to outside observers might seem rural, but many of us, if not, the great majority in the 80% range, live within small towns and cities. I'm currently in Missoula, college town, 100,000 people. This is considered the big city. So, different audiences, different language here. But regardless, like I was saying before, the extreme forces of inequality that we've been seeing in other parts of the country, and I might sound like a broken record or like I'm saying something that's pretty obvious, had not really hit here yet. And the pandemic changed everything. We have a 0.38 rental vacancy rate in the city I'm in right now. There is no way to get a house. And prices for housing have doubled or tripled because people from the coasts are moving here. And we simply don't have the infrastructure, the inventory, or honestly, like the state culture of being able to understand how to absorb all these new people so quickly. And so that is really changing and I think activating working class politics here in Montana in a way that I don't think we've seen since probably, the prior gains of the union era. And that's something that my campaign and I am trying to usher in again, this concept that, I think that not only can we activate ourselves and organize our communities using prior politics from our grandparents, really honestly, but also move forward in this new world where we have to kind of band together and really fight for the rights of our communities.
Has the housing crunch led to a noticeable spike in homelessness?
Absolutely. Yes, it has. And I'm looking at my window right now. It was 9 degrees last night. We do not have the capacity right now and the civic institutions to deal with these problems that are kind of hitting us like an avalanche. And so, we are scrambling essentially, and we're seeing, I think, political identity in the state, which has always been somewhat strange. I mean, most people think Montanans are walking around with like big belt buckles and, or walking down the street in boot spurs. I mean, we have a Democratic senator, a Republican senator, and we've had Democratic governors for the last, 16 of the last 17 years. And that Montana kind of, I would say, individualistic look at the way politics can go is being scrambled even more by what we're seeing with the unhoused and with kind of the breakdown of our meager social services that we have already. And it's a general understanding that we need more.
And what is the influx of kind of Californians into the area doing to the politics of the natives, the locals?
Well, I don't at all want to. How's this? I think about 60 or 70% of my electorate was actually not born in the state, and I was actually moved here when I was 20. So so many of us have come here to make a life and found that this world, Montana does feel like a world, that this world is a place apart and that it deserves not only our respect, but also it's a place that can give us so much to make our lives here. And the politics of people moving from afar, it doesn't really cut the way you might think from a look outside looking in. We're seeing a lot of people moving to certain parts of the state, especially from the Seattle area, that are actually, claim to be fed up with the problems of what they consider a liberal Seattle base. And so they're moving here, but we're also having so many people move to our cities that are coming because of what COVID did, or, they're concerned about, they don't think they can afford those towns, but they can afford better here. It's changing the politics in terms of their preferences, but it's also activating again our sense as Montanans of what we can do politically.
And your campaign's making a real run at kind of carving into the hold that Republicans have over the rural working class. And so how are you doing that? And is the Democratic brand less toxic in Montana than it is elsewhere around the country because of people like Jon Tester? Or is the Democratic brand completely toxic? What about the word progressive? Like, do you stay away from that when you're in rural areas? What is the language? What is the message that you're using in those areas?
Well, I mean, there's so much to unpack there. I mean, the Democratic brand I don't think I need to lie and say that it's fresh and new here. We are struggling against what can be an often politically toxic brand in our state. And it's a misapprehension on the voters of what we stand for. When it comes to, I think Senator Tester especially, he's done so much to buoy the Democrats here. I mean, if you look everywhere else around us, I mean, we're surrounded by, Idaho, North Dakota, and Wyoming. Those places are not exactly Democratic bastions. Right. I am part of a Democratic Party here I've been elected to the legislature in a district that voted for President Trump plus 11 points. And I ran as a progressive Democrat. And I think that shows that the brand doesn't really pull us down as much as people might expect. And also, when it comes to your question about progressivism, I mean, look, like I said, the proof is in what I did. I ran a progressive, community-focused Democratic campaign in a largely Republican district and won. Progressivism is I think it's thrown around as an epithet for some people. In other places, right at this point, it's just synonymous with what means a Democrat who really cares about their community and wants to bring meaningful change. And that's what I've been about. And honestly, it's what our Democratic Party here is so much about. And I think it's why we've been able to hold on and hopefully, win more votes here.
So what's your race looking like? What's the primary looking like?
Primary, we have two other people in the race at this point. And one from Bozeman, one from Missoula. I'm based in Polson, come down to Missoula for work, and because there's more than 3 restaurants. One of the things that I think we really should focus on as well, however, is the general, and it's Ryan Zinke. And a DC-based crowd will know him as the guy who literally walked in on a white horse to become the Department of the Interior head.
Didn't he have his hat on backwards or something?
Well, no, he rigged his flywheel backwards. His hat was on backwards. And he lives in California. We're talking about Californians here. He literally does not live here, which I find galling. I mean, he lives in Santa Barbara. He did his campaign video from Santa Barbara. There's palm trees in the background of most of the things he does. One of the things, though, that, that's one thing. And
actually, let's play. If we have the clip handy, we can put it in now. But if not, we can put it in post. But you tell us about how you stumbled across Zinke's address, Zinke's quote unquote home in Montana.
It's embarrassing because I actually just needed some gas, and I was driving through Whitefish, a town about an hour north of my place, and it was in the snow. And I thought, I heard Ryan Lee Zinke lives around here. But everyone says he doesn't. It's supposedly a hotel. Why don't I just go for a walk? And so I just took a video of it while I was literally reacting in the moment. And it is true. He does. I mean, it's a bed and breakfast. As far as I can understand it, he claims to live at a bed and breakfast in a ski town when he actually resides in California. Now, that has its own problem of just lying and demeaning the voter. But honestly, I am offended myself as a representative. Right. And it's someone who had to wake up when it was 9 degrees outside. It's just not, it's gonna make people angry. And it does. I think we saw with that video that I posted, somehow, social media can work and not work for politicians, but honestly, getting the word out in a world where the news media here has been decimated by what's happening with Sinclair and the private, and local newspapers has been invaluable. And people will respond to outright liars and cheats. And that is what he is.
Has it broken through in Montana that he literally doesn't live in Montana?
I mean, if I'm doing my job, it's breaking through.
Huh.
Yeah, it is. Honestly, that's the thing. It fits into this narrative, though. And you were speaking to the primary as well. There is this question in Montana politics. It's not whether you're from here. It's not whether you live here, even. It's whether you're dedicated to the project of this place. It is not easy to live here. It might look beautiful from the outside, and it certainly is. But it is hard to get a job. It is hard to make money. It is hard to raise a family, and it's cold. And it's just from those simple things it comes a sense of, I think, solidarity and community that other parts of America have largely lost. And to have people come in and claim that they live here and not be part of our lives and our project is what is galling, not just to me, but to Montanans everywhere. And that it extends from the primary to the general. And it's why also, back to your question about progressivism, it doesn't really matter the label here. What matters is the community values you espouse. And our campaign has won before, but also is leading on those community values to define what they mean in the new reality of COVID, larger inequality, population increase. The world is changing under our feet, and we need to have people who are based here in order to understand and articulate our values.
I have a theory I wanted to try out on you, which is that cold environments, super cold environments, breed communitarianism in an interesting way, in the sense that it's dangerous. Like it is, your pipes freeze, you get snowed in. It becomes more than just an inconvenience. Like people's lives are at risk, and communities have to work together, because wealth is a great buffer against what the cold can do, but it's not 100%. Like you can be a super rich person, get stuck out in the cold somewhere and need help simply to survive. And so a communitarian identity kind of builds up in these colder places. And I've heard people say that some of these communities in Montana could be at a crossroads, that they could take that communitarian identity, either push it further in a progressive direction, or push it completely into a white identity, white nationalism direction. I'm curious if your experience with kind of those Montana areas backs up any of that theorizing.
Absolutely. Well, you're playing right into my hand, because my actual last name is Winter, so we have that. We can extend it from anecdote to the reality of it. Like factually, so 2 days ago, I was in a rollover in my truck, and I'm obviously perfectly fine. But the amount of people and the concern that people showed when I rolled off the road and ran to me and were so kind and helpful. I know it happens everywhere, but we really do, like you're saying, if it had been dark, or I'd been on, 5 miles to the east, or a different time of day, or in a storm, no one would have known I'd gone off the road, and I might not be able to get out. We really do face, I think, just honestly, the problems and perils of living in a cold, rural area. It's not hostile by any means. It's the most beautiful place on earth, but it's not an easy place to be. And so you're right. In the day-to-day interactions, we depend on each other in a much more mundane, but I would also say pretty profound way. Right after this, I have to go shovel my walk, whatever, that's kind of meaningless. But honestly, that's what's needed in order to show that our community continues and that people can walk in front of my house on the sidewalk.
Right.
And as you're talking about progressive values too, that communitarian identity, regardless of the weather, has been here anyway. And if you look at what happened in Butte 100 years ago, they called it the Gibraltar of labor. It remains, by all demographic looks you'd see, places like Butte, Montana, overwhelmingly white, working class, older population as well, should be voting for Trump, should be heavy like Trump country, or like kind of angry Republican. And instead, it retains I think a community value and a real, I think people-focused politics. It's a legacy of the labor movement that they really partly sparked. And so that's part of what you're talking about, I think, with these communities that are kind of carved out of these places where it can be hard to make a living and have suffered from decades, if not a century, of exploitation. Right. And that goes beyond the weather again. That comes from outside forces like corporations, coming here, exploiting our resources and people, and then leaving us with the environmental bill. And I have seen that, and that is a large part of my candidacy, is making sure that communities understand that they honestly are not at the mercy exclusively of these market forces that do not care whatsoever about them.
Okay. Well, Tom, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ryan. Pleasure.
Okay. And we will have more Rising right after this.